January 18, 2026. The night air above the Persian Gulf is cold and sharp, cutting through the steel decks of the carrier like a blade. Petty Officer Daniel Carter stands alone beside the railing of the USS Nimitz, 27 years old, son of a truck driver from Kansas, a radar technician trained to watch the sky and warn others before death arrives. Tonight, the radar screens glow brighter than usual. Far out across the dark water, invisible lines divide the world. One side belongs to the United States Navy, the other, to Iran. The tension has been building for weeks. All tankers attacked, drones shot down, missiles tested in secret desert bases. Intelligence reports whisper about something bigger coming. No one knows when, but Carter can feel it. Behind him, the flight deck roars alive as an F-A-18 Super Hornet screams down the runway, engines tearing through the silence. The jet vanishes into the night sky toward the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most dangerous choke points on Earth. Inside the Combat Information Center, the air is heavy with coffee, sweat, and quiet fear. Radar screens sweep in slow circles. Green blips appear, disappear. Commander Rachel Hayes studies the display. Anything unusual, Carter? He leans closer to the console, adjusting the frequency filters. At the moment, negative, ma'am. But even as he says it, something flickers on the screen. One signal, then 3, then 12. Unknown contacts, rising fast from the Iranian coastline. Carter's stomach tightens. Ma'am, I've got multiple launches. The room freezes. Commander Hayes steps closer. Missiles. He zooms in. The speed is wrong for aircraft. Too fast. His voice lowers. Ballistic. A cold silence fills the command room. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Iranian missile crews have already pressed the launch button. Sirens suddenly explode across the carrier. Missile alert, missile alert. Red lights flash. Sailors run across steel corridors as doors slam shut. On the flight deck, mechanics scramble to clear aircraft before impact. Carter watches the radar numbers climb. 16 missiles. No, 18. They are coming straight toward the American carrier group. Commander Hayes grabs the intercom. All stations, prepare for defensive intercept. Aegis batteries online now. Far above the dark sea, American destroyers begin firing SM-3 interceptor missiles, bright spears of fire streaking into the heavens. For a moment, it looks like the sky itself is going to war. Carter grips the edge of the radar console. If even one missile gets through, the USS Nimitz and the 5,000 souls aboard her will vanish in fire. The radar screen flashes again. A new signal appears, closer, lower, and moving far slower than the ballistic missiles. Carter frowns. Ma'am. Hayes turns. What is it? His voice tightens. I think we've got incoming drones too. Outside, the first explosion lights up the horizon, and the war between America and Iran has just begun. The first interceptor missile rises from the escorting destroyer, like a pillar of fire. From the deck of the guided missile destroyer USS Gridley, sailors watch as the SM-3 interceptor disappears into the black sky. Above the Persian Gulf, seconds later, another launches, and another. The night suddenly looks like a storm of fire. Inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Nimitz, Petty Officer Daniel Carter stares at the radar screen as symbols, multiply faster than his mind can process them. 18 ballistic missiles, now 20. Iran has launched everything at once. Commander Rachel Hayes speaks calmly, but the tension in her jaw gives her away. Confirm intercept trajectory. Carter zooms the display. Multiple incoming vectors from southern Iran, likely Hormozgan province launch sites, which means the missiles cross the Gulf in minutes. Too fast for mistakes. Across the carrier group, the Aegis combat systems aboard, American cruisers and destroyers track the incoming weapons with machine precision. Radar beams cut through the night sky like invisible searchlights. The first interception happens 60 miles above the water. A silent flash appears on Carter's screen. Splash 1. Someone shouts. A ballistic missile vanishes in midair. Another flash follows seconds later. 2 down, then 3. Outside, the sky blooms with distant white explosions, high above the clouds. But Carter's eyes are locked on the lower part of the radar grid. The drones, small radar signatures, low altitude, flying just above the ocean surface. And there are far more of them than anyone expected. Commander, Carter says quietly. Hayes steps beside him. How many? He swallows. At least 40. The room falls silent again. These aren't ordinary reconnaissance drones. These are shade attack drones, cheap, slow, but deadly when used in swarms. They are designed for one thing: to slit through missile defenses while everyone is looking up. Outside on the flight deck, Lieutenant Marcus Vega sprints toward his waiting F-18 Super Hornet. Ground crew pull away, the wheel chocks. His headset crackles with urgent voices. Multiple hostile drones approaching the carrier group. You are cleared hot. Vega climbs into the cockpit. Copy that. His canopy seals shut with a metallic snap. On the deck behind him, the ocean wind howls across the carrier. The catapult officer raises his arm. A final salute. Then the Super Hornet launches into the night, blasting forward with explosive force. Inside the CIC, Carter's radar shows the drones spreading out, like a net tightening around the fleet. One group heads toward the destroyers. Another dives straight toward the carrier. Hayes grips the tactical console. Engage with close-in weapons. All ships. Moments later, the silence of the sea shatters. From the decks of American warships, phalanx CIWS guns begin firing. 6,000 rounds per minute. A wall of bullets tears across the dark sky. The radio inside Lieutenant Marcus Vega's helmet crackles with static. Carrier group, be advised. Multiple Iranian fighters inbound. For a moment, the words hang in the air like a warning bell. High above the Persian Gulf, Vega's F-A-18 Super Hornet cuts through thin clouds as his radar sweeps the horizon. Then the signals appear. For contacts. No. 6. Fast-moving aircraft lifting off from deep inside Iran. Back in the Combat Information Center aboard the USS Nimitz, Petty Officer Daniel Carter feels the tension in the room spike instantly. Radar confirms, he says quietly. 6 fighters approaching from the northeast. Commander Rachel Hayes studies the screen. Type. Carter magnifies the radar returns. Their speed, their altitude, their formation. Likely F-14 Tomcats and MiG-29s. The room goes silent again. Iran is sending real fighters now, which means this is no longer a missile strike. This is air combat. Hayes presses the intercom. Launch the second cap. Get more birds in the air. Above the carrier deck, the night erupts again as another Super Hornet rockets into the sky, followed seconds later by a third. The American carrier group is now fully committed. War has officially begun. High in the darkness, Vega pushes his jet higher, climbing to 25,000 feet. The stars shine above him like cold steel. His radar locks onto the incoming formation. 6 enemy aircraft. They are flying low at first, hugging the clouds. Then suddenly they climb. They know the Americans are here. Vega's breathing slows. Training takes over. Fox to ready, he murmurs. In Iran's cockpit, Major Reza Tavakoli tightens his grip on the control stick of an aging F-14 Tomcat. The aircraft is decades old, a relic from another era, but still deadly in experienced hands. The Persian Gulf spreads beneath him like black glass. His wingman's voice comes over the radio. American fighters detected. Tavakoli exhales slowly. Then tonight, we test them. Back on the USS Nimitz, Carter tracks both formations racing toward each other across the radar screen. American fighters, Iranian fighters. 2 arrows closing fast. Distance 30 miles, Carter reports. Commander Hayes folds her arms. Missile range, 25, which means the first shots are seconds away. Up in the sky, Vega sees the enemy signals grow stronger. 6 aircraft now clearly visible on radar. His targeting system locks onto the lead fighter. A tone rings in his headset. Missile lock, he whispers to himself. Let's see what you've got. His thumb presses the trigger. Fox 3, an AM-120 ram. Missile launches from beneath the wing of his Super Hornet, igniting into a streak of fire that races through the darkness. Across the sky, Major Tavakoli sees the warning light flash inside his cockpit. Missile incoming. He reacts instantly. Break right. The Iranian fighters scatter in different directions as the American missile streaks toward them. High above the Persian Gulf, the sky is no longer silent. It is alive with fire. Lieutenant Marcus Vega banks his F-A-18 Super Hornet hard to the left as warning alarms scream inside the cockpit. A missile warning light flashes red across his control panel. Missile, missile. Somewhere behind him, an Iranian fighter has fired. Vega slams the throttle forward and dives, pulling nearly 7 Gs as the ocean rushes closer beneath his jet. His vision tightens for a second as gravity crushes against his chest. Deploying countermeasures, flares burst behind the aircraft like a chain of miniature suns. The incoming missile streaks past the burning decoys and vanishes into the darkness. Vega exhales once, sharply. No time to celebrate. His radar lights up again. Enemy aircraft everywhere. Above him, another American Super Hornet streaks past and fires an AM-120 MRAM. The missile arcs across the night, sky like a spear of white fire. Seconds later, a distant explosion blooms among the clouds. 1 Iranian fighter disappears from Carter's radar screen aboard the USS Nimitz. Splash 1, Carter mutters, but the relief lasts only a moment. Because more signals keep coming. Commander Rachel Hayes stares at the tactical display as the situation becomes clear. Iran isn't just probing. They're committing their air force. Count. Carter runs the scan again. 17 fighters now inbound. Hayes nods once. Then we meet them. She grabs the intercom. All stations. Launch the remaining combat air patrol. Full defensive posture. Above the carrier, the flight deck becomes a storm of motion. Yellow shirt directors wave their arms. Engines roar to life. Another pair of F-18 Super Hornets catapult into the sky, their afterburners painting the darkness orange. Far above, the first true dogfight begins. Major Rizat Tavakoli's F-14 Tomcat climbs sharply as his radar officer calls out targets. American fighters at 10 o'clock. Tavakoli rolls the massive jet into a sweeping turn. The American aircraft flashes across his canopy for just a second. Too fast, too close. He squeezes the trigger. His M61 Vulcan cannon erupts in a thunderous burst. Tracer rounds tear through the sky. Across the darkness, Vega sees the glowing line of bullets streak past his wing. Whoa! He jerks the stick and climbs hard. Another missile warning screams. The sky has become a maze of fighters, missiles, and contrails twisting through the night. Inside the Combat Information Center, Carter's radar begins blinking with impact symbols. Another Iranian jet vanishes. Then suddenly, one American signal disappears. Carter freezes. Commander. Hayes steps closer. What happened? He swallows. We just lost one of ours. No parachute signal. No emergency beacon. Just an empty space on the radar screen where a fighter used to be. Far above the Gulf, Vega hears a voice scream over the radio. Mayday. The transmission cuts off mid-sentence. Vega clenches his jaw. Inside the Combat Information Center aboard the USS Nimitz, the radar screen glows like a map of chaos. Petty Officer Daniel. Carter stares at the new trajectory line stretching across the digital grid. It begins deep inside Iranian territory and curves west across the Persian Gulf, past the American fleet, past the oil platforms, straight toward the Arabian Peninsula. Commander Rachel Hayes studies the projection silently. Impact estimate. Carter runs the calculations again. The computer processes the missile speed and altitude. His throat tightens. Approximately 9 minutes. 9 minutes before something somewhere explodes. Hayes reaches for the secure communications line. Patch me through to Central Command. Across the ocean, alarm signals are already racing through American military networks. Satellites have confirmed the launch. Radar stations in the Gulf have tracked the plume rising into the upper atmosphere. And now every American base in the region is listening. Carter zooms the radar further. The missile climbs higher and higher until it nearly touches the edge of space. A classic ballistic arc, but its destination becomes clearer with every second. Commander, Carter says quietly. Hayes turns. Where? He points to the projection. The line ends in a small cluster of symbols on the map. A massive American airbase. All UDAID, he says. Nearly 10,000 U.S. personnel stationed there. Bombers, command centers, fuel depots. If the missile hits, the war will explode far beyond the sea. Far above the Persian Gulf, Lieutenant Marcus Vega's F-18 Super Hornet cuts through thin clouds as the dogfight continues. Missiles twist through the night like hunting animals. He hears the strained voice of another American pilot over the radio. I'm defensive. I'm defensive. An Iranian MiG-29 flashes across Vega's radar, too close to one of the American jets. Vega banks sharply and accelerates. The MiG's engine glows bright in his targeting display. He locks on. Fox 2. An AIM-9X Sidewinder missile leaps from beneath his wing, turning sharply toward the enemy fighter. Seconds later, a violent flash erupts in the darkness. The MiG disappears in a burst of fire. But Vega barely notices, because a new message suddenly breaks through the radio chatter. A command broadcast from the carrier group. All aircraft, be advised. Iranian long-range missile launch confirmed. Vega frowns. Target, static crackles. Then the answer comes. U.S. base in Qatar. The cockpit suddenly feels smaller. This fight in the sky is no longer just about protecting a carrier. Now entire bases, entire cities, could be targets. Back aboard the USS Nimitz, Carter's radar tracks the ballistic missile as it begins the most dangerous phase of its flight. Re-entry. The warhead separates from the rocket body and plunges back toward Earth at hypersonic speed. Impact time, 4 minutes. Commander Hayes clenches her jaw. Any intercept capability. Carter shakes his head slowly. For 3 long seconds inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Nimitz, no one breathes. Petty Officer Daniel. Carter stares at the radar screen where the 2 signals vanished. The Iranian ballistic warhead and the American interceptor. Gone. Commander Rachel Hayes speaks first. Status. Carter's fingers move quickly across the console, refreshing the satellite feed and radar sweep. The screen updates. Then a new symbol appears. Debris field. High above the desert. Carter exhales slowly. Confirmed intercept, he says. Warhead destroyed before impact. The room releases a quiet wave of relief. Thousands of lives just avoided catastrophe. But the war is far from over, because above the Persian Gulf, the dogfight is reaching its most violent moment. Lieutenant Marcus Vega pulls his F-18 Super Hornet into a steep vertical climb, engines screaming as the aircraft pushes toward 30,000 feet. His radar is crowded with signals. American fighters, Iranian fighters, missiles chasing both. Vega, check your 6. A voice shouts over the radio. He turns his head just in time to see it. An Iranian MiG-29 streaking up behind him, its afterburners blazing like twin torches in the night. The enemy pilot is closing fast. Too fast. Vega slams the control stick forward, dropping his jet into a sudden dive. The G-forces hammer his body as the ocean surges up beneath him. The MiG follows. A missile warning screams. Not tonight, Vega mutters. He releases a burst of flares and rolls violently to the right. The missile streaks past, detonating harmlessly behind him, but the MiG stays with him. The two fighters plunge through the clouds together, engines roaring over the dark gulf. Inside the Iranian cockpit, Captain Farhad Jafari keeps his sights locked on the American jet. The Super Hornet twists and dives like a wounded hawk, but Jafari has flown combat exercises for years preparing for this moment. He presses the trigger. His cannon erupts. Tracer rounds slash through the sky. Back aboard the USS Nimitz, Carter suddenly notices something unusual on the radar. A cluster of signals approaching from the north, but they aren't Iranian. They are broadcasting NATO identification codes. He blinks. Commander, new aircraft entering the battle space. Hayes turns. Who's? Carter magnifies the signal. British. Moments later, the radio across the carrier group crackles with a new voice. Come, professional. This is Royal Air Force Flight Echo 1. We are entering the operational zone to assist. High above the Gulf, 4 RAF Eurofighter Typhoons slice through the clouds like silver blades. Their radar immediately locks onto the Iranian fighters threatening the American fleet. The balance of the battle shifts instantly. In Vega's cockpit, the MiG behind him suddenly breaks off. Its pilot has seen the new arrivals. Over the radio, the Iranian formation begins shouting rapid commands in Persian. They weren't expecting reinforcements. The night sky over the Persian Gulf has turned into a battlefield of nations. Lieutenant Marcus Vega steadies his F-18 Super Hornet as the sudden arrival of the RAF Eurofighter Typhoons changes everything. Moments ago, the Iranian fighters had numerical advantage. Now the balance is shifting. A sharp British voice cuts across the shared combat frequency. Echo 1 engaging hostile aircraft. Seconds later, a Eurofighter Typhoon fires an AIM-120 missile, its engine blazing bright against the clouds. The missile streaks toward an Iranian MiG-29, attempting to retreat east toward the coastline. The explosion is brief but violent. Another enemy signal disappears from the radar. Inside the Combat Information Center aboard the USS Nimitz, Petty Officer Daniel Carter watches the radar grid slowly clear. Enemy aircraft down to 11, he reports. Commander Rachel Hayes nods, though her expression remains tense. This isn't over. She knows what every officer in the room understands. Iran's Air Force has more aircraft than the ones currently in the sky. Much more. High above the Gulf, the air battle becomes chaotic. American Super Hornets and British Typhoons maneuver in coordinated formations, forcing the remaining Iranian fighters to scatter. Missiles flash. Jets twist through moonlit clouds. Over the radio, pilots from different nations exchange quick, professional commands. To contacts heading south. Copy. Engaging. Vega spots one of the Iranian fighters attempting to escape at low altitude, racing toward the dark Iranian coastline. He locks his radar, but before he can fire, a new warning tone screams inside his cockpit. Not from the MiG, from something much larger. He checks his radar again. His heart drops. Multiple new signals have appeared. Not aircraft, missiles. Back aboard the USS Nimitz, Carter sees them at the exact same moment. His radar screen suddenly fills with dozens of rising signals launching from the Iranian coastline. He stares in disbelief. Commander, new launches confirmed. Hayes steps beside him. How many? Carter zooms out to capture the entire radar grid. The answer chills the room. At least 40. This time they aren't ballistic missiles. They're cruise missiles. Low flying, hard to detect, and perfectly designed to attack ships at sea. Across the Persian Gulf, American destroyers begin broadcasting urgent alerts. Mass cruise missile launch detected. All ships prepare for saturation attack. On the flight deck of the USS Nimitz, sailors look toward the distant Iranian coast. Even from dozens of miles away, faint streaks of fire can be seen rising into the night. The largest missile strike of the war so far has just begun. In the sky above, Vega hears the order over the radio. All aircraft shift mission priority. Intercept incoming cruise missiles. The dogfight with Iranian fighters is suddenly secondary. Now the real threat is racing across the ocean surface. Missiles flying barely 50 feet above the waves. The radar screen inside the Combat Information Center glows like a storm map. Petty Officer Daniel Carter watches as dozens of tiny symbols sweep across the Persian Gulf, moving in a deadly wave. Cruise missiles, low, fast, and nearly invisible to long-range radar. Distance, 40 miles, closing rapidly. Commander Rachel Hayes doesn't hesitate. All ships engage layered defense. Across the carrier strike group, American warships snap into action. The guided missile cruiser and destroyers surrounding the USS Nimitz begin firing SM-6 interceptor missiles, bright streaks of fire launching into the night sky. Moments later, their evolved Sea Sparrow missiles follow. Above the dark water, defensive rockets arc outward like a web being thrown across the horizon. But the Iranian missiles keep coming. They skim the ocean surface only a few meters above the waves, weaving unpredictably. Designed for exactly this moment. High overhead, Lieutenant Marcus Vega pushes his F-18 Super Hornet into a steep dive. His radar locks onto the nearest cruise missile racing toward the fleet. The weapon is small, barely visible against the black water, but his targeting computer finds it. Fox 2, an AIM-9X missile launches from his wing and tears downward. Seconds later, a small explosion flashes above the ocean. One cruise missile disappears, but 39 remain. Back on the carrier, the sky suddenly erupts with noise. The phalanx CIWS guns mounted on the ships begin firing. 6,000 rounds per minute. A wall of tungsten bullets streaks into the darkness, glowing orange as they cut through the humid night air. On Carter's radar, enemy signals begin to vanish. 37, 34, 31. Each disappearing symbol means another missile destroyed, but some are slipping through. Distance, 15 miles. Hayes grips the edge of the console. Prepare for close engagement. On the flight deck, sailors stare out into the darkness beyond the carrier's bow. Then they see them, tiny lights racing across the water. Cruise missiles approaching at terrifying speed. Inside the CIC, Carter counts silently. 20 missiles left. Then suddenly, a massive explosion flashes on the horizon. One of the destroyers takes a near hit as a cruise missile detonates in the water beside it, throwing a towering column of spray into the air. But the ship survives. Another missile disappears under CIWS fire. 16 left. Then 12. Vega's fighter streaks across the sky again, firing another missile into the swarm. The explosion briefly lights up the clouds. 10 left. 8. 5. But 2 missiles break through the defensive ring. Carter feels his pulse hammer in his ears as the radar tracks them. Distance, 3 miles. Both are heading straight toward the USS Nimitz. Hayes whispers quietly, "Brace for impact." Outside, the missiles scream across the ocean surface, their engines howling as they close the final distance. Suddenly,